we know that you want Jorge Masvidal next for Conor. Why is that the right fight?
Man, I just think that you're never okay. So I'm one of those guys who, when you look at the whole picture, you say who right now translates the best. And if you're trying to, like, my perspective is Conor doesn't deserve probably Nurmagomedov yet. It's a 155-pound title, but he just regained some of the mojo that was maybe lost or compromised or pent up or wherever, put in purgatory. He's got that back. Jorge Masvidal is at the very height of his game. Like, I don't think he will ever get higher than he is right now. So who's worthy of basically colliding in this type of situation? I think that these two guys, you put it together and you're thinking only from a very big fight standpoint, I think you can't get bigger than that one right now. I just think that those two guys, you may miss the boat on the Masvidal thing if he goes and fights Usman, because let's face it, man, that's a fight he could lose, right? That's a fight that I think a lot of people would pick Usman to win, and it gets compromised. I think that his newfound sort of fame and like celebrity within this game and his persona, everything that's playing into it is perfect to put him against the other guy who basically has that from a different perspective. So I'm like, put those guys together and make it happen. Conor likes 170 pounds. I know that Masvidal's big, but I feel like Dana's just kind of throwing that. He's too big for Conor stuff because it's reverse psychology. I think he actually really wants to sell the fight, so he's selling reluctance. He's selling like his own reluctance as like the thing we have to get over to get the fight, and that's all fine and good. I hope that's the case. But I just think those two guys right now where they are, and plus when you look at the other guys kind of around who have a chance, the only other one that I would kind of put in that range would be maybe Justin Gaethje, right? Like, he's another guy who I think could be a big fight. But if you're just talking about where they are, star power, and the kind of doubt that would go into the outcome, I think that Masvidal versus McGregor is the biggest one.
Me too. And I think as well for Conor at this point, the way he's talking about this whole season thing, being consistent, and it's like he's trying to roll back. I think he's trying to win the admiration of fans now because of what happened. And I think a fight with Masvidal would be the best one for him to continue to win them fans back, because if he's going to go down and fight Khabib, there's going to be a huge portion of the crowd that's like, come on, what's that all about? He just won one fight. And then if there's people, if he fights Justin Gaethje, which would be cool, and I think people would get that, but then John Kavanagh is asking for it at 170 for some reason, which makes no sense.
Insane.
That doesn't make sense.
So, like, I think the Jorge Masvidal one, a lot of people would be on board for that because they're both in a similar position where they can fight whoever they want, and it's a tough matchup.
I also think that, I've talked about this a billion times. I'm sure I've talked to you guys about it, but there was always a sense of escalation to what Conor McGregor is doing. I feel like the Cowboy Cerrone one was like return to ground zero. I feel like Masvidal, though, kind of puts him back into that rarefied space where he's trying for things that are, bizarre and different and maybe bigger than he should be shooting for, that type of thing. Because I don't care about the BMF belt, but I mean, obviously that if that's in play, the bigger the better. But the fact that Dana has basically planted the seed that Conor's too small for this fight and everything else, there'd be the proper amount of doubt and overcoming, the sense of overcoming and triumph and all that. I feel like that would be in play for sure, man. I think it stays in tune with who he is as a fighter and as a human being, and like his sense of like bigger and bigger and bigger. I just think that Justin Gaethje saying, "Hey, Justin Gaethje, we want you to come meet us at 170." That's other fighters, man. Other fighters do that stuff, not Conor.
Yeah, we had a question from Keegan Irwin that we were going to ask later, or we're going to answer later on, but I think it applies here as well. So he was talking about how he thinks there's a lot of people who are looking at the Masvidal-Conor fight and saying that Masvidal will be a huge favourite, but he thinks it's a lot of recency bias towards that. Mm-hmm. If Masvidal and Conor fought, how do you think they match up, and do you think that Masvidal should be a huge favourite?
Well, okay, so you're right about the reason. I think that's true because Masvidal obviously had a very good 2019, but let's go backwards just a little bit. Who would you have favored if they had fought a couple of years ago? I think Conor McGregor, right? Because he seemed the more invincible side of this. I just think that we're seeing Masvidal at his very best, but it's also slightly tricky because him knocking out Askren in 5 seconds doesn't tell you a whole lot about what he would have handled in the adversity of that type of fight. I don't know, and I'm not saying Conor will bring that kind of fight to him because obviously he would not. He's not going to wrestle him. But I do think we have seen in the course of time Masvidal get beat up on the feet too. It's not like this is. It's not like he's always shown that he's susceptible to the ground, but his stand-up is second to none. I do think that Conor McGregor's stand-up is that good. And so you get into a little bit of like, yeah, the recency bias, I think, plays a big deal. But I do think that the line probably closed up a little bit if that perception is out there by seeing a 40-second, annihilation of Cowboy Cerrone. Now, you could say what you want about Cerrone, but that's still impressive no matter how you slice it, man. And we've seen Conor do that in big moments. I just think that I think it would be closer than the line would indicate right now. Let's put it that way. I would feel like it's a closer fight. And I'm talking Sean El-Shadi, my guy on Man in the Myth. He's all about Masvidal and some of these. But it's funny how attitudes change as you get into fight week, and I feel like that's part of that psychological warfare that Conor not just wages against his opponent, but he puts out there for the general public to sort of say, like, you know what, man, he may win this, and it feels like he has the ability to kind of turn favor like that. So I think it would be close in the end, man. I really do. I think it's if they match up, I think by the time we get there, we won't know who's going to win. That'll be the fascination of that fight.
I think Conor as well. I think him and his team and the UFC as well, they've done a great job of building that narrative that he wasn't the same guy during the Khabib fight. And they're like, and like to the point where I was like, he wasn't the same guy. Even though like if Khabib and Conor fought, I'd pick Khabib 10 times out of 10.
Right.
But I think they built a brilliant narrative to say, Conor, he's back. He's back. He's training.
Yeah. I think that's smart. That is the smart play. If that's truly the fight he wants, the smart play is to plant it in the general public and just keep repeating it, let it grow, that Conor was not who he is right now. And, hey, man, at some point, I just think that, it would be too soon for him to go against Nurmagomedov next. But if he's able to go through Masvidal, and I know it'd be 170 pounds, but honestly, Nobody gets the sense of exceptionalism or like exceptions as Conor McGregor. I would totally understand at that point. If he gets by Masvidal, I would totally understand a scenario where they're like, okay, we think he should be next for Nurmagomedov. That's the fight he wants, and he's proven he's come back. He's won a couple of fights at 170. I wouldn't even dispute it because I'd be like, he's the big draw for the company. It's stupid for them not to look at something like that. And he finally has erased some of the doubts about all that stuff. Plus, you have this narrative of maybe he wasn't in his right space, which people would start to buy on some level, especially the national media. And I think even us, like the people like us, because we did see changes, through his persona over this time. So they could sell it. I just want to see it not happen next. I want to see it happen down the road when it has a chance to get our delusions ripened again and us feel like that could happen, like he might challenge him.
Yeah, completely agree.